Welcome back to the podcast. Ray Roche, founder member of Two Pugs Publishing. My cohort is Mr.
Jim Lavery. Jim Lavery, the second pug in the team pugs, the other pug. Welcome back, everyone. This is episode 2, Ray.
Yes, of the Talking Gun special.
Of the Talking Gun special, yeah. So we do a brief, just summary from last week or over last week. I think I'm not sure where we left off last week.
Well, if people haven't seen part 1, it's a vampire western. It's a race after the Second War, the Civil War in America. A vampire turns a soldier and sends him home to take over a town that has a gold mine, silver mine. Sorry, the vampire needs that silver.
Silver mine.
Yeah, needs that silver for his own nefarious reasons, and mayhem ensues. You know, now, as I said last week, there's no main character. It's an ensemble thing where you have vignettes of different characters, those little bits of stories that happen, but it's an overall story arc relating to that particular soldier. He's turning into a vampire, a fully fledged vampire. He's not quite there yet. He still needs blood to survive, you know, but he still has some sort of moral family allegiance to his farm and his wife and child, you know. But the bad guys are coming, you know, in the form of an English vampire. And that's the background.
Yeah, you're not wrong. You say the mayhem ensues. Yeah, you're absolutely right. There's lots of characters. There's not one story. There's loads of stuff going on. There's the old world versus the new. There's technology in the form of the talking gun. This new technology going on. You can feel the pressure of the new world coming in, the railroads and these temporary towns are now taking root and evolving. There's the Old West, I guess, and this friction. There's a spiritual world of the Native American meeting the old European vampirism coming through. So the clash of these two cultures. Loads of stuff going, loads of stuff, and it ends. I'm not going to give away any major spoilers, but it ends in those days of, we'd say, vaudeville. There's a scene and so there's those things going on as well. Performance and songs, performances going on, and so there's all this mix. There's this whole mix of the old world and technology and everything that you get in those westerns, all churned up into, as you say, mayhem. A really brilliant, just a brilliant series of influences. And we talked last week of where all this came from, Ray, and people can go back and watch last week's episode. But just to summarize, there's Leone movies and pulp books of all of that. So.
It's nice to do research, but sometimes when you do research, you find out that things weren't the way you liked them to be or have been. We've been bred with Hollywood, you know. This is the Old West. This is how it was, you know. The Man with No Name, Clint Eastwood, Sergio Leone. The real West was completely different. It was you lived or died, you know, depending on water, you know. No one could be more than half an hour from a water supply because you'd die in the Old West if you weren't, you know. So they needed civilization to go with them when they moved. They needed the railroad, they needed towns. And because of that, it brought with them, the vampires in this are like a metaphor for the old deep roots in society that stagnate, that live off us, the leeches that live off us. They take our taxes, you know, they live off society, they don't produce anything, they don't help anybody else, they just suck the lifeblood out of us, you know, that kind of way. And that could be politicians, could be anybody, you know. The Old West was a horrible place to be. No one wanted to be there, and if you weren't prepared for it, you didn't last long. So what I did was, after all this research, I sat down and I said, right, what did I like about the Old West? And I liked, as you say, Sergio Leone's look of it, you know, where you had a train station in the middle of nowhere, you know, and these guys show up and there's great music and it's atmospheric, and man could rely on how fast he could draw a gun, you know, which is totally silly, like, you know, but it plays into my, you know, I don't like Robin Hood. You know, he's too clean cut. You know, I liked the man with no name because in the first two movies, you know, especially A Fistful of Dollars, he's not completely clean. You know, he ends up helping people, but that's not why he showed up in town. You know, it's a byproduct.
Yeah.
So that was where I basically based these amoral characters, you know, and most of the people in this thing are amoral. We even see the family on the homestead, his wife and his child, the vampire's wife and child from his old life. The wife isn't squeaky clean, you know. She doesn't come out of this story as being a good person, you know. She was a woman of her time. She married a man 20 years older than her because that was a done thing back then, you know. And women very, you know, they had a horrible life to begin with. Then they had to have babies, you know, and then the mortality rate for a mother and child was so high. It wasn't completely unheard of a man to marry 4 or 5 times in his life, you know.
Wow. Yeah.
She's married this guy and she thinks it's going to be the two of them against the world, the way all young couples are, you know. He goes off to war and meets this vampire, you know. He's a man who has a strict moral code, but then he meets a vampire and becomes infected. And that's a common theme in my stories, the slow, insidious change, you know. It's not always a cataclysmic thing that changes the way we think. Sometimes over a period of years, it's one drip, 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 and suddenly we don't realize we're on the wrong side of the law here. You know, what we're doing isn't really right anymore, but it's right now. And the influence I had for these was that character in the Old West, like you have there, the Clint Eastwood character, who we don't really know his background. You know, he shows up, he does his job like a plumber would, fix a leak. You know, he shows up to shoot people, hopefully the bad guy. Then he's gonna get.
Yeah.
But that's all we want out of this character. You know, we don't want him hanging around.
Yeah.
So
there's that idea. I think there's somebody had written. I read this years ago. In fact, I'll read it out to you. This will be really interesting. Maybe it won't be, but we'll read it out. But it just so happens I looked this out from last week, and it is structures of the Western film. Okay, so I'll read these out and we'll see. This is this. I'll tell you where this came from. Adapted from W. Wright, Six Guns and Society, LA University Press from 1975. You just inspired me last week, and I remembered I had this, and I went out and I hooked it out. Okay, so there are 16 functions describe the narrative structure of over 700 films. Okay, and it's called the classical plot. Okay, so number one, the hero enters a social group. And you think about the man with no name, you know, there's a social group, in comes the stranger, the guy from, you know, the hero is previously unknown to the group, except possibly by reputation. The hero is revealed to have an exceptional ability or strength. He's a gunslinger. As you said, he's a gunslinger. The society recognizes a difference between themselves and the hero, and they give the hero the special status. He's the, you know, the respect or fear. We fear him. He's going to do it. Okay. The society doesn't completely accept the hero. He's an outsider by definition. He's an outsider. He's not one of us. And there's a conflict of interest between the villains and the society. Of course, they're villains. The villains are stronger than the society, or the society is weak by being law-abiding. That's their weakness, that they're trying, you know, the good people, the good folk. There is, or was in the past, a strong bond between the hero and the chief villain. That's that spice, isn't it? That you've got.
Oh yeah.
That between them, there's like a frisson between the two of them. The villains threaten the very existence of the society. The hero initially avoids involvement in the conflict at all, nothing to do with me, Gov. The villains endanger a friend of the hero, so then it becomes personal. The hero fights the villains, the hero defeats the villains, and then the society is safe. And then this is really interesting because, as I said at the start of this can describe the structure of over 700 films, not just Westerns, but this is where it's interesting for Talking Gun, because these last 2 points are really, really interesting. Either the society accepts the hero or the society closes ranks against the hero. Okay. And then either the hero enters the society with or without a special status, or the hero leaves the society and journeys on. So, and it lists here Shane. This is the plot of Shane, or A Fistful of Dollars. You can't, after the hero kills, so say the hero has an ability that the society doesn't have, like he's a killer, then once he's killed the main villain, he can't come into the society because he's a killer, he's a threat. Now, they're really interesting. When after we'd finished our talk last week, I looked that up, and I remember that, and I looked it up, and I thought, I don't know if they apply to Talking Gun, because there's so many, and there's not even a society necessarily. Sure, there's not
really, no.
Yeah,
this is a Western because they're on horses and it's set in the days. This could quite easily be a gladiator movie, a story. It could be a few things. It could be Platoon, Vietnam, where we've never been, but we know the rules. We know the rules of Western. We know the rules of Vietnam, even though we weren't serving vets. We know how it works. Because we've been given these tropes through pulp fiction and paperbacks, through Hollywood. There was a time back in the 50s and 60s, every single day there was a Western program on television, movies, TV series, every single day. And they taught us valuable lessons, that all of these things are biblical. The bad guy is very obviously the bad guy. The good girl, a good guy, is very obviously the good guy, good girl. Except when they're not. Except when everybody is morally ambiguous. And this started off as a race story to get somewhere. Two factions that were both vampire families.
Yeah. In
the back of my head, I took every character that I had that were staples of like television westerns, the man in black as the young vampire becomes. He gets younger looking, the vampirism takes over, he wears black all the time. Right? There's the helpful neighbor who really wants to shack up with the wife. There's the stalwart and too good looking woman who should be wasted away and frail and full of consumption and God knows what. The little boy who wants to be like his daddy, wants to be a man, can't wait to be a man. All these things. The people in the town, the guy who owns most of the town, Mr. Jensen, has a Mexican boyfriend. All of these things you won't see in Hollywood cowboy shows because they don't fit. All of these people are ambiguous in some fashion. So all the rules for Shane, they don't really apply because there's no central character. There's no central guy coming in from the outside. There's someone returning home. Yeah. And if you've read the script all the way through several times, and you'll see, if you read the book, you'll see this slow creeping rot hits them all. It hits Hutch and his group that were so tight together during the war. They've got no problem leaving this guy because he got shot in the stomach, Yeah. They've no problem rushing into the bank because there's something there they want. If they can't find the vampire, they want gold. They want something to make it worth their while. They're not really, they're only friends by association, by coincidence, you know.
Yeah.
The vampire traveled over to, I think it was New Orleans, but New Orleans was flattened and that was rebuilt. And the companies that rebuilt it filled the town with secret passageways and all sorts of things that are still there today, believe it. So New Orleans is a fascinating town. Google the history of New Orleans. It's brilliant, right? This guy goes, Sam Vampire goes, and he gets his buddy from the war and says, get the 4 or 5 bloodthirsty guys, you know, follow me. And they root out vampires in New Orleans before. That was in the old script, but it got lost. Then they head out to Cold River, and they're going to, they're going to help this guy. This is where the the true ambiguity comes in. Are they helping him? Are they running away from something? Is society following them? Like everything's progressing too quick for them, you know? These are men who sit around talking about who has the best gun, the best man killer. This is how they view themselves, you know? Society and rules and regulations are coming, they're trotting along behind them. And they're just keeping a step ahead. And for the vampire, the young American vampire, there's an English vampire who's coming as well. Everyone in it knows the inevitable is coming. The wife knows he's going to turn completely. You know, what does she do then? Will she get out in time before that happens? You know, the full neighbor who wants to help out all the time, Jubal, he shows up. He's one of those, you know, the friend from Little House on the Prairie who's always showing up. You know, he's that guy.
Yes. Yeah.
He's that guy that's always there, but he has a reason why he's always there. He doesn't have truth and goodness in his heart, really. You know. So everything's ambiguous. It doesn't follow the true tenets of like those 16 stages you had there of the Shane Western. As you were reading them, all I was thinking was that's Shane. You know.
That's
why when you have revisionist westerns like Unforgiven, you know, the rules don't apply. You know, Clint Eastwood and the other guy, Morgan Freeman, I think it was. These are men who could live the rest of their life without picking up a gun, but they pick up a gun to go and get a reward. You know, again, kind of, you know, not really Shane. You know Shane takes a bullet, keeps going. You know, so revisionist westerns.
It reminds me of. It reminds me of, you know, I'd heard, and I'm sure you know more about this. Unforgiven kind of is explaining that what reputation and what does and what it goes ahead of you, and these things get exaggerated. And I didn't know. I mean, it was years and years ago. I thought that the Wild West went on for 100 years, and it really wasn't. You're saying it was like 20 or something?
Yeah, it's a generation. That was it. Yeah.
A generation. And the gunfight at the OK Corral was really, and I remember watching or reading something or watching that I think that in a year, like average, there was like 6 killings. There wasn't, you know, you see these movies like these what do you call them, these just blazing gunfights, you know, people falling off things, and you know, and I was kind of disappointed. I was going, oh, there's about 6 killings a year. All right, okay. But what I'm those things. When I was reading those, I was interested about those.
No time.
They don't really apply, but there's all these movements. There's all these parts, components of the story, and they're all coming toward the same. You could see them all. They're all going to the same point. This is going to be the real, you know, the showdown. And so, in that sense, they do share a bit of the tropes there. In that, like High Noon, eventually these things come. They're unavoidable, and eventually they all come to a head. There's a confrontation. There's a showdown. Not in the traditional, like in the middle of the street showdown, but you know, all these movements are all going in the same direction. So, there's something that I wanted to ask you about, and I think you've made something really, really clever. And I don't know whether it's clever of you to do it, and or it was clever of me to realize that you did it, or clever, probably smart, because I'm not that smart. So probably you've done this on purpose, and then I feel you've made me feel smart by realizing it. But one of the things I think that, you know, what you were saying about westerns were everywhere. They were on TV, the High Chaparral, Gunsmoke, Bonanza, Deadwood, the Virginian, and on and on and on. They were everywhere, and it was and so that was the transition. That's in the early days of TV. They made these shows, TV shows. One of the first things they did in cinema was cowboy movies. So whenever this new thing come along, television, what do we put on this thing? Cowboy things, shows. And what I thought about that is that's really, it's really important document of the stories we tell ourselves about ourselves. The cowboy encapsulates, so you can take it from the early days, John Wayne on the plane, and you know, he's a hero, he's a man's man, he's got to do what he's got to do. And these are the kind of stories people told themselves post-war, post-Second World War, that the man did the righteous thing.
Yeah.
He had to do something that was dirty, but he himself was good. And then you go into the 70s, and after the Nixon Watergate scandal, the heroes, Clint Eastwood's dirty, he'll shoot you in the back, he doesn't care. Yeah. So they reflect the times. And then I thought, and now Ray's telling this story, and I'm thinking what he's suggesting is, in these times, it's not black and white.
Yeah.
Nobody's wholly good, nobody's wholly bad. It's some sort of gray in between. Is that fair enough? Is
that's it exactly? Yeah. Yeah. Fair play to you.
Yeah.
There's no central character.
I'm not that.
No. If you had a central character, you'd have to give people something to hang on to. Otherwise, you know, like, excuse me, if you don't give people a framework that they understand what's going on, it can get very confusing, especially if you've got a lot of characters. So I deliberately took a main character out to force people to realize everyone in this is amoral, ambiguous, you know. They say they're standing up for the right thing, but they're not really. They're suiting their own purposes until they no longer need you, or their purposes change, you know. And you're right, everything is grey. It's not black and white. In life, things are very rarely black and white, you know. And the older you get, and the more
that's is that deliberate? Did you deliberate? Because that's today, this is what's going on today. This is from your work and just what's going on in the world.
Yeah.
Like your belief, that's something that you believe. Nobody's completely good or bad, or and then you put it into. That's amazing. That's really amazing to have that intention.
Yeah, everything I do, I start off with the message. I use the message method. What it means is, you want to write a story about something. You start off with a blank piece of paper, and you put a box at the top, you put the message, whatever it is, whether it's friendship, whether it's loyalty, whether it's ambiguity, let's say. And you pick two things that pop into your head, two words, you write them down. Then you pick each one of those words and you write down two things that word reminds you of. Once you've gone down 8 steps, you have a page full of words that you think don't relate back to ambiguity, but they really do, you know.
Yeah.
I set out to have literally two trains converging at a point, you know, and people were doing anything they wanted, anything they had to get there, you know, to a vampire family, these clans, and brought that ambiguity over, that people will do what they need to get to their destination, even if destination is freedom, you know, and that ambiguity, like, why are any of them doing what they do? You know, not always for the best reasons. They say it's for one reason, but really, people say one thing, they do the other, you know?
Yeah.
But yes, you're right. I start off with a basic idea, a thought, a feeling, and from that, I do the message sheet, and then I go, okay, write a story with these elements. Yeah. And believe it or not, it works its way back to the main main story, to the main
Mhm.
theme. But sometimes it can get lost, especially if you've vampires and too many characters and things. But fair play to you for noticing that. That's because you're so close to it. Sometimes you can't see the wood
Yes.
for the trees. Sometimes,
Yeah. Yeah. It's the thing. Yeah, that's the thing. And drawing it, I it's slower for me. So you could take it at face value. You could just read it and react to it as it is. It's a story, and it's cowboys and vampires. So you could take it at this level, but because I have to go back and forth and all of this, I'm thinking like the other books, Two Pugs books. There's more stuff going on here. Hang on a minute. There's other stuff. He's talking about something else. So you can take it at face value and just react to it in that level. But if you take the time to, and you realize, hang on a minute, there's themes here. There's even City of Clowns. Where's my copy? It's here somewhere. City of Clowns. You go, well, you could take it at face value. You're talking about clowns, and you've done a funny thing about cops are clowns, and that's kind of funny, and but if you want to read it that way, that's fine. You'll get something out of it. But then you realize that there's something else going on. There's another idea here. You're using comics and comedy, or comics and kind of supernatural and historical things to talk about something else, which is just us. I mean,
we have that luxury. We can do that because we're small and independent. We don't have to satisfy 3 editors, who'll tell you. The reader don't want to know any of that. Just have something exciting happen. And that's one way of selling comics. I mean, you can sell 1 million comics that way. I'd love to sell 1 million comics doing that. But we spend a year on one of these things.
Yeah.
What keeps you going for a year? Oh, big explosion. Oh, this girl has no clothes on. Whoa. And what keeps me going is I'm telling the story, and there's layers and layers and layers of the story.
Yeah.
And this relates to that, and that happens because of this. That keeps me going for the year. It's a huge thought process. But, even if people just pick up City of Clowns or pick up Talking Gun and they read it at face value, it's a Western, there's vampires. That's great.
Yeah. Yeah.
You don't have to worry about the encroaching of progress and this idea that a man's going to do. Well, no, he doesn't. He's doing it because he wants it. There's something. Freud said that there is no such thing as a totally 100% altruistic act. Even if you're doing something, you're taking the bullet for the president, some part of you is saying, I'm a hero for doing this, and that's a human condition. There's nothing wrong with that. But we tend to think, oh, people will feel horrible about me. They'll think I'm not a hero if I say it out loud.
Yeah.
When you make a comic, you're saying something out loud. You're distilling it down, you're painting a picture and saying, that panel, here's what I'm saying. And that's when it becomes, people think, well, what's he really doing here? Does he like vampires getting shot in the head? No, it's we have to show you the process of how to get killed. We have to show you that John Twopugs is a killer. He's a great character.
Yeah.
He's one of those Native Americans who was almost a shaman, but changed his mind at the last minute. Now he's in the white man's world, and he has no problem killing. He doesn't have a problem. He
really doesn't. Yeah.
But he's that noble, savage, forgive me for using that expression, but he's that person that we look up to, that he must know more than we do. He's closer to the land, closer to the spiritual world. But John Twopugs is a man.
We talk about John Twopugs.
Yeah. He's behind it all, he's a man, a man of his time. And they were very close to the earth, to spirituality, and life and death was a small step from one to the next, and some Native American tribes believed that a good death was to die in battle. Others believed it was to die with a lot of wives and a lot of children. He's one of those characters though that, when you see the hitman in a movie,
yes,
and they're so slick, they show up, they've got a disassembled sniper's rifle in a case, and they wind it all together, and they wind the thing.
Yeah.
And now, anyone that fires a gun will tell you can't just set up a gun like that. You got to test fire it. You got to get the sights right. You got all sorts of ballistics things involved. These guys show up in a hotel, and there's all slick music, and they go in, dun, 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 bang, and then they're gone again. And these guys are just so good at what they do.
Yeah.
He is the American Indian version of that.
Yeah.
He brings the tool with him, and he does the job, then goes. My favorite scenes are where he's on the astral plane, so to speak, and he's fighting this demon, who can sort of shape change,
Yeah.
And shape changing was a huge thing for Native Americans. They saw human traits in animals all around them, and vice versa. And of course, took a lot of drugs, which that's okay. And they had these wonderful spirit walks,
Yeah.
And there's John, and he's a grown man now, and he's just found out that blood drinkers, and there's a lot of similar vampire kind of adjacent monsters in Native American lore. So he's well used to hearing about vampires and what they're about, and he's just so glad that he's now on the road to meeting one and hopefully killing one, because he sees that as being a good death. If he doesn't survive that, he doesn't mind,
Yeah.
He has no end game after killing the vampire.
Yeah. They're fascinating stories about Native Americans and what we believe and things that we hear mostly from movies and everything. And I think that somebody had said, I think that are estimated to be about 10 million Native Americans. And somebody else said, yeah, you're off by about 100, some more likely 100 million, it was just a slaughter. It was just, I can't remember the exact numbers, but just much, much more. And then you're talking about the difference between Canadian Native Americans down to Central America, even, that's a complete, and the ones that we really tend to think of are the ones from Westerns, Western, that very limited amount of people. And within that huge range from North to South America, Central and South America, you must have, overlaps of magic and stories. And you've got this huge vast, as you're talking about, blood drinkers and shapeshifters, and fascinating. That's just really, really fascinating. So in a way, we were talking about earlier there a second ago there, it wouldn't be appropriate to have a hero, really, because what we're saying is you're living in what the society you describe, and all of the characters that you have. The only one I could sort of describe as a purely good character is the little boy.
Yes, yeah.
Because he's not old enough to really affect everything, to affect the world around him.
Yeah.
He's not. But he's not the kid from Shane.
No.
He's not that guy. He's different. I don't know if you want to talk about him. Was that?
Yeah. Literally, as soon as she gives birth to the baby, Bart, the husband, he joins up. He barely sees the child because he's at war. He's still in the same country, but he's so far away, he never sees the child. So he gets letters and stuff like this, so he keeps in touch that way. But when he becomes a vampire, he travels home and meets a child for the first time. And there was a scene that I took out where his bloodlust takes over and he leaves these scars in the back of the child's shoulder, and this would have made it more reasonable for the wife to distrust him later on, because you get the feeling in the book the wife doesn't really trust him. He's a vampire.
Yeah.
You would have felt that she was taking the child and protecting the child as mothers do,
Yeah.
But I took it out, and I probably shouldn't have, because it was really good, because his face changed, and he became a vampire. But we already had Helga the vampire and something else, and and Caleb is that innocent boy that you put in danger with the monster, There's a
Yes.
filmmaker called Guillermo del Toro. A lot of his movies have the boy and the monster have these little scenes, and it goes back to Frankenstein, a little girl at the lake. You know,
Yeah.
and is
Yeah.
she in danger? Does she know she's in danger? You know, because
Yeah.
kids are so innocent, they just accept what's in front of them. You know.
Yeah.
So he was there to be sort of the boy and the monster, you know, and he was going to meet different monsters. And his uncle Jubal was going to turn on them. That I took that out of the book because Jewel had to go a different way. And the father was supposed to give a bloodlust and this kind of thing. But he's a kid who totally buys into what a man should be, you know, like the whole Shane thing where was it I can see the guy's face. He was the farmer in Shane. He's the true hero. He
He's
stands
a
up.
yeah.
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 Was it Van
Yeah.
Heflin? Maybe it wasn't. But
Oh,
he he's the true hero because he doesn't have supernatural skills with a gun. You know, he's just
yeah.
himself. And
Yeah.
he's fighting the earth and the elements and time the whole year. He's fighting the bank and everybody else, you know.
Yeah.
And he's just a man and he knows it. He knows limitations. And he knows that the son idolizes this gunslinger, Shane.
Yeah.
Well, in the book, Caleb, he is a sort of similar to that boy. He's bought into this idea of what a man should be.
Yeah.
And he finds out that no, there's a time to cut and run. You don't have to stand up and die for something, you know. There are things you should stand up and die for. But a piece of land, you know, a silver mine, they're impermanent things because someone can come along and take that away from you, you know.
Yeah. And he although he's innocent in that he's not able, because of his youth, he's not able to affect the world around him. He can only react. Still, he's got to kill. He's got to, he's got to survive just as purely. So it's not a Disney movie, you know, it's tough.
No.
It's tough going. Yeah, he gets a hard time, you know, and that's the thing about it. You go, this is existing. You're at the frontier. You're at the mercy of the elements. You have got to do what you have got to do to survive, and it's a survival thing. And as the wolf will come to your door.
Yes. Yeah.
And it certainly, comes to his door. And although he's a good kid and he's doing the right thing, and I guess he is doing the right thing. He's looking after his mom. He's defending their property and staying alive. Still in this world, you don't get to be kind of a Disney character and kind of which always, tell me what you think about this. This will be interesting to find out, because I was talking about somebody else about, lots and lots of comic book, especially comic book artists, have their own superhero. They'd like to do, this is the character I'd like to, and effectively what they're doing is their own Spider-Man. They've got their own Spider-Man or Batman or whatever it is, their own idea of what their superhero would be. And we were talking about this, about killing. I was talking about this, actually, I think it was the PJ. I was talking about this, about the act of killing and how, lots of superheroes, they have all this terrific violence without any killing. And you think, all right, okay, because Batman doesn't kill, Superman doesn't kill, and so on and so on. And we were thinking about how, so let's say you were just, you had superpowers, right? Okay. And the characters in Talking Gun, whatever you say, supernatural powers or something like this, but you were really, really strong, really powerful. Would you defend any of them? Would you go, Spider-Man hangs about on tops of buildings looking for robbers, I mean, if you had superpowers, in the Talking Gun, if you had some sort of, if you were part vampire, but, or had those sort of powers, what would you do? Would you hang around all day waiting for the bank to get, would you break up a fight at the saloon? These people are, in lots of ways, they're not wholly good or wholly bad. would you defend them? Maybe one or two of them. What would you do? Or would you let them die, saying they're all as bad as each other?
Well, I think your man, Bart himself, I think he knows what he can get out of people. He's reduced people to either a food source or something that can help him, fulfill his wishes, his needs. He has priorities, and he befriends the right people in the town. But they're really only cannon fodder.
Yeah.
I can't see him, defending anybody really. I think his humanity is slipping away, and we're seeing it at the tail end of the tipping point where he becomes just another vampire, so I don't see him defending anybody really. He's hanging on to the wife, because of what she represents,
Yeah.
But I don't see him being a defender of anybody, if you had a superpower, I suppose you'd probably try it out, but after a while, I mean, how many muggers could you stop and go,
Yeah.
Yeah. Why hasn't Superman? Why didn't Superman sort out the problems in Ireland? How long would it have taken him?
Yeah.
Why didn't he travel back in time and kill Hitler? Why didn't he? He can hear every voice screaming in the wilderness when he floats over the earth. And I hate this floaty Superman thing that people do. I see a comic and floaty Superman looking down at the earth. He's the Uberman. She can do anything. What's he doing?
Yeah.
He's fanning about. Whoa, look at me.
Yeah, he's
I just hate it. Right?
Yeah.
So why didn't Superman stop the two towers going down?
Yeah.
I feel very strongly.
I suppose that's
heroes,
Well, it applies. It's the hero more than the super.
What is
these
a hero?
people? I'm not. Yeah, that's the thing, because there isn't. Yeah, there's not that central heroic character in the Talking Gun.
There's just people.
It's not. There's just people. Yeah, it's not appropriate. It wouldn't be appropriate to have. I suppose if somebody acts like sacrifices themselves for the greater good for the society, you could say, well, that's a hero. That's somebody who laid down their life or whatever to protect the greater. We call that heroic, or stand up, even though. Yeah, even though
not giving it away, but when Jubal dies, I'm not really giving it away because when he rides in on his horse, he's got a mark on his back. He's not left with this world. He's going to go in some fashion. And when he dies, he is so disappointed. This isn't the way it was supposed to happen. Maybe Crocodile. Where are these Mexicans coming up? So there's just no, even though the guy wants to be a hero, things don't work out quite the way he expected. No one gets what they expect. And even when it's over and
which is refreshing.
Guys, the two boys are walking away, and it's I just can't resist going back to Bo and Sam. They have to have a bit of banter. Even though one guy has to realize that this guy's going to eat me tomorrow. And the guy is thinking, Indian, what's that like? They got together to fight this vampire. Now why are they doing together? What have they got in common anymore? I'm an apex predator. When it comes to it, you're just a man. So there's ambiguity in everything. But one of my favorite deaths is Jubal, when he's so disappointed. I don't know if it comes across that way, but I was writing it. I went, put myself in his shoes, and I went, oh, I'd be really this happened to me in this particular way. I go, is that it?
I don't want to share the artwork on it, a spoiler alert and all that, but there's this kind of, those characters, you've seen them in movies, and they get shot in the chest. They always have to look down and tear open their shirt
Yes.
kind of look at it as if they can't quite believe.
Yeah.
It's that kind of. It's not enough just to fall over and that's me done. He has to tear open his shirt and have a look at it as well.
There's
I think the most famous. Sorry, I think the most famous version of that I ever saw. I think it's in The Godfather Part 2, where Vito shoots Don Andolini. I think it is the guy. You remember he's messing with the light.
Yeah.
Everything, and then De Niro shoots him, and he looks down. He has to tear open his chest. So, oh, sorry. Go ahead.
We did a thing one time at work about things we hate in movies, right? And cop movies. I've got a gun, bang, 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 click, click, click. I've got 3 pounds of heavy metal I could beat you to death with. What do I do? Throw it at you and run away. Why? Around the corner you could find a box of bullets. Who knows? And when someone gets shot, and we think, oh no, they're dead. They open the thing and they've got a ballistic vest on. What do? The thing that's saving their life. Tear open the Velcro, take the vest off, show you the bullets, and throw it away. Now they're defenseless. We get a good laugh at that and work a lot of times. There's lots of things like that, And the guy, those old 70s cop movies where the black cop comes in and he's a slick dude. What's the white powder? I'll tell you. Cut the logos.
Yeah.
Does all this. He'd be on the floor, cardiac arrest, 2 minutes after I did that. No one says a word to him. Yeah, go ahead. Tamper with the evidence. Do undiluted drugs. Go for it. Go on. And the professionals look at things and they go,
yeah.
So I would love to
think
have...
you must say it'd be lovely to have nothing but cliches, like a whole cop story where they come in and they're all eating donuts, and hanging out coffee, and just nothing but all the cliches. The bad guys could say, I know my rights, etc., and
But what we think we know, like what we know about the West, I spent months looking at this and going, picking the right gun, what came before the Gatling gun, what were they using, for literally to stop a lot of people coming through a barricade. They had multiple rifle muskets set up that would fire at once, but took a long time to reload. That didn't work for me. And then I found a French guy did this thing where he had blunderbusses set up, 4 of them on a chassis that could be used on a ship to repel boarders. It was like firing like 4 or 5 cannons at people. They literally would shred the guys coming, but they would shred everything. All the rigging, all the wood, everything was just gone. So that's what I had in mind for defending the homestead before the delivery of the Gatling. See, it seemed like a waste of time having a Gatling gun being delivered. But the whole idea of that was progress is coming. This is what we had, but something better is coming along. And that multi-barrel gun, that's the kind of thing that they had before they had Gatling guns. And it was
that's what effective. I wanted to, because last week we teased a bit that Ray gives me both barrels, so we can like have that story, because I don't know what happened.
Something got across words or something, and it went backwards and forwards, and you end up we look at the wrong pages and things, and in the end it was, we'll come back to this page. We went down and then came back to it. And the clear-headed, we just got it sorted. But that thing was very important to show, because that's what they had. They mounted on a cannon chassis, and it was literally blunderbusses. You could put anything you want into them, nails, pieces of rock, God knows what, and they were devastating. They literally made a hamburger out of anything in front of them, and they were used in ships, they were used at piers, all sorts of places. Anyway, you'd have a lot of men coming at you, because men are meat on legs, and if you're designing a weapon, That's all you cared about, you know.
Yeah.
Reduce that man coming at you to hamburger. That's basically, you know, a lot of weapons are designed to do that, like, you know. So it was very important to see that going, and the setup for it, the fact that they had all these these things were in place, you know. This was status quo. They thought this was the height of technology. Then the vampire guy comes along and he goes, hang on a second, there's something better. His experiences he brings, he's part of bringing, he says he doesn't want progress to come, but he brings progress because some progress is good. So he brings the Gatling gun. It's a big metaphor, you know. But there's a fun in games going backwards and forwards on this thing, you know.
I think, it's a really brilliant point, because I can explain sort of what happens. Something just takes hold in your mind, and then, you know, you finish for the day and you go off, and, you know, and then you come back the next day, and that thing that has taken hold in your mind, you can't let go of. So then it comes time, like this is much later than the book, than the shotgun, but because also in the book it goes back and forward in time, you know, there's flashbacks, and, you know, you're trying to keep track of it. And because I'd already drawn the shapes with the wheels and, you know, the mount and the seat and everything, I'm not sure if it comes to, yeah, I can't I really want to show the next page, because it's just what you're talking about, making a hamburger out of people. I don't want to spoil it either, but that's what happens. But as I was drawing it, I think it's just something automatic, you know, because I'd already drawn a version with the wheels and everything, but different. And then you were asking me about it, and I was like, "What? What's he talking about? What are you? Hang on a minute. Okay, the barrels." And then, oh, hang on. And then, but then you'd sent me reference photos and everything. And I went back, but again, just keeping in my brain of where in the story this takes place, you know, time wise. That was it's weird that, you know, just a wee detail like that. It's a really important detail. It's got to be right. And I think you and I talked about it. And this, I wanted to mention this shot. This is the shot from the Searchers.
The Searchers, yeah, love it.
So
yeah,
that's the thing. I mean,
it's a pity there's speech bubbles in there. You know, it probably would have been better if I hadn't put speech bubbles in. I just got the vista, the rectangular vista, then that would have been probably better, stronger, you know.
But it's one of those things. You throw it in there, and it's one of those little you get a wee tingle or something. You just a wee bit of satisfaction.
Yeah,
you know, it's why you do it. Those little moments of kind of, oh yeah, you know, it makes, as I say before, you make me feel really clever. So anything makes me feel smart in any way. So yeah, those it's a good thing for artists to kind of realize that this can happen. It can affect your brain that way. You know, you get in a muddle, and it's a small detail, but it's a really important detail. It's got to be right. You know, it's got to be important. We had it back and forth about it. Because a lot of times if I do something, depending on the time frame and everything, and if I've cocked up, usually you can fix it. You can say, no, listen, I can, with a few dialogue changes, I can fix that, which is terrific. But in this case, you know, it just had to be.
No. It's integral part. Everyone's going to be looking for the talking gun, unfortunately. Like the guns at the start of the book, some of them aren't appropriate to the time period. A lot of the handguns they would have had would be loaded one barrel at a time from the front. You know, once you've used your shot, that's it. You had a second gun you had to use. Maybe you had 3 guns. We just obliterate that because it's Hollywood. Because it's talking gun, we have to have the gun talking. It has to look a certain way, and it has to be the point where really everything comes to that point. You know, does the family stay in the homestead and fight to the death, or they leave? You know, will the daddy show up? Well, no, the daddy's in town because he's got his own business. He thinks he's trapped the bad guy in town. You know, so everything comes to that crux, that point, that focal point of that gun and when it's used. And after that, it's the aftermath. It's what happens to all the characters after that. But it had to be exactly there. It had to be arrive on time, because it's a metaphor for all that technology, all that thing that's coming, that's going to obliterate their way of life. It's a gun. Simple as that. Peace technology.
Yeah.
It's like airplanes. When airplanes started,
Whenever I start,
that was it. You were done.
Yeah. And the steam train, when the steam train arrives, you realize that this is further change coming. More technology, more change, more people, more ideas, and everything. So that those spiritual, they become less and less, because the modern world is coming. It's going to chase all that away. You definitely get the feeling of that. When you sent me the script, and we first talked about this, and you really described this as a labor of love, and I'm not bloody surprised. It's so vast, and really it could be 3 times as long. Really, there's enough material there. But you described it as a labor of love, and it's done now. It's completed, and you'd had another attempt at getting it done. We talked about it last week. It didn't work out so well. But now that it's finished, do you think you're finished with the Talking Gun?
Yeah. I have 2 more. Some things from the original script that I'm going to put in the second story, and the second story will be a little more clear cut. There will be a main character that is a hero, and it's Caleb. He's slightly older. He had a Chinese wife, which is something he didn't have in those days. And there's Chinese ninjas, girls who help him attack a train. It's called the Russian train, because the bad guy, Russian vampire, he's on his way, and the idea is to stop him getting to San Francisco. So they literally head him off at the pass. And again, there's a fulcrum point at this pass where everything happens. Excuse me. And not finished with this. This, as I said, it was a labor of love. It started a few times, and some people just went, "No, I can't do this," because the story was much different at the start when it first started showing to people. But it's a labor of love. A few people had a look at it and so started and went, "I don't know about this. This is too complicated. This is a big story. Blah blah blah." And even when I gave it to you, I said, "No, you sure?" And you were, "Oh yeah, no problem, Ray." And I can imagine you scratching your head, when you're looking at how many characters in this, and where's it going? And I know what it's like. You get something, and it's crystal clear in my mind.
Yeah.
But I've been living with it for years, and I've seen it mutated to what it is. And then just to be handed something and go, "Well, that's it, do that."
Yeah.
It must be, slightly, I don't know about this. The floor is moving under my feet here, but you did a fantastic job. You held it together. I honestly expected wigs on the green every 5 or 6 pages. You're asking me to do what? Because I had that before. Things that I think I can see very clearly. A cowboy scene at a campfire. Here's what it is. No, can't be done. That's double page spread. No, I don't think so. And then Jim Lavery sits down and goes,
"See, it's a point of kind of professional. That's the reason that why would you do this for anybody younger than me? I think we're going to have a chat with Daniel Fee at some stage, and he's much younger than either of us, and so it's good to chat to younger people, and because I just wish there was no internet whenever I was starting out in comics, and the waste of time. Like, as you and I have talked about, anything that saves you time, you want it. If it's technology or a pencil or a ruler or something that saves you time, it's just godsend. That's what you want. And if you're determined to sit on your own in a room for 8 hours a day drawing horses, right? You better love it. You better love that isolation, because if you don't, you're not going to last. You're not going to. And I'm not saying I'm famous or anything. I came at comics from a really side angle. Like comics was the last thing. I didn't want to do it as a profession because it's so difficult. You've got to really, really want to. So the idea of somebody said to me horses, I would see that as a challenge. Like if you, for some reason, said, right, Jim, we're doing pirates next week, I go, right, okay, cool. It's the reason why you love it is because you don't know what's next. And it's that excitement of doing something new, brand new, and challenging yourself. The only time I didn't refuse, I kind of said, no, I can't do this, was I got a Transformer script.
Oh.
And I said, I can't do this. And the reason was because, I mean, if you could draw human beings, and Transformers are either cars or humanoid robots, is because I wonder if I could show you. So you know how if you're dealing with somebody flesh here, it's different if you get flesh sort of folds on itself and all of this and bends and stretches and all of that. Whereas with robots, it had this boxiness, and I didn't know how they would overlap, you know. So, and I was thinking about that. Plus, you might have a fight scene of 40 or, well, let's even say 6 or 7 of these robots on top of each other. How does if you're doing that with flesh, people bend over and flex and everything, there's a lot of forgiveness. And I was just trying to think about this. And then there's very specific. So if there's very specific robots, you have, you know, this face with that shape of head and these marks. You've got to do that again and again and again and again and again. I just thought, no, I don't want to do that. I can't do that. But I would never say emphatically no. You know, I'm never going to. And you know, if I felt like it, if I felt the urge to kind of to do it, like I would definitely jump in as a challenge. But that's, you know, the next guy might think, no, this is easy. I can do that, no problem. You know, go for it. One of the things, actually, a good example is Judge Dredd's costume. So so we'll use this guy here. So we've got Judge Dredd and everything, and that's okay. You've got his thing. I remember one time just drawing, well, if I drew Judge Dredd, could he not just have 2 kind of circle shoulder pads, and, you know, and he just sort of has a kind of helmet like this. And then you just have this sticker on his chest and then you don't have to do the eagle and and it was just pure laziness.
Pure laziness.
Yeah. And then at some stage you go, well, it's not Judge Dredd anymore. It's something else. Yeah. It's not Judge Dredd.
I've never read 2000 AD.
Have you not?
No. I never saw one copy, and it was when I was doing a course with PJ, and he'd finished. He was describing how difficult it is to work in 3 dimensions in space and have 3 different armadas attacking each other. And this convention people have a Star Trek that the ship is always like that at the planet. Why isn't it like this? Why isn't it like that? You know. And so you have all these ships that can come at any angle, but you have to show them for the human brain to go, oh yeah, that's coming at me. Yeah. So he's working on one of those things, and he brought it into shows, and he was looking through, and I went, oh, that's 2000 AD. And he goes, yeah. Have you ever seen this? I said, no, I don't read 2000 AD ever. I could see him drawing back. He had this flowery Hawaiian shirt on him, right? And he went, like this, like a school map. No. And I went, oh, I've obviously offended him in some fashion, but I can understand it's not just a license. Judge Dredd is a way of life for some people. Yeah, you can't really do it. No, it's a stalwart. It's the brand, you know.
I remember the thing about it is that when I was a kid, and I know you remember the 70s and the 80s and all of this, and it was just seemed crap, just kind of crap. And we still had 1 or 2 parks where they chained up the swings on Sunday, and that it was just great. Sundays were grey and miserable and boring and everything. And then you had these cartoons and comics, and it was color, and people were fighting, and you could just read them in your bed, and swap them and these kind of thing. And there was everything, Roy of the Rovers,
even secretly read Misty, horror, because it was like horror comics. I was, oh, this is awesome. Yeah, there's just this color, this vibrancy coming through. Then you're hooked. As you say, it's a way of life for some people. Just you're hooked. And the thing about it, there was 2000 AD, it cashed in on that Star Wars thing. There was a Star Wars, coming around that time. So there was just this desire. I remember coming home. I remember it was the bright July day, middle of summer, no school. We'd been in the park for ages, like all day it seemed. And we were walking home, and my cousin was across the road, and he shouted, if you believe this, like it's 4 lanes of traffic, and he's shouting on. He was running home, and I said, "What's going on? What's going on?" He said, "Spider-Man is on TV." And I was like, "What?" So I just legged it back, and we watched the Spider. And it was the old crappy '60s cartoon, but it was amazing. We just, wow, this is amazing. So you have these just this burst of color, and it just hooks you, and it can do. I just think as a medium, it can do things that just the others just can't. I love it. I just love it. And so, Talking Gun Part 1. Well, this is Part 2 of our talk about Talking Gun, but Talking Gun is the first. I'm really excited now. You're telling me that there's going to be more Talking Gun, which just is terrific as far as I'm concerned.
The second one is the Russian Train.
The Russian Train.
The Russian who turned the British vampire, and the British vampire wanted Silver to overthrow him. When Silver is dug out of the ground, vampire representatives in the Treasury Department, they do a ritual that make it inert. Vampires can touch it, so it's no longer dangerous to them. And so this Russian guy, he wants that untouched Silver, because he has a boss somewhere as well. Way back in oldie Greek times, there's a vampire, right? And second one is the Russian Train. It's to try and stop the Russian vampire getting to San Francisco, because John, Two Wolves, and Bart's wife have taken all as much silver as they get on a train and have taken to San Francisco. And these boys want it, The third one is called Armageddon Walk. It's where we meet the Russians' sire, the first vampire, the Greek person. And again, we meet them in the Old West. Or do we?
Or do we? Oh, okay.
Yeah. I have an idea for that one. We'll see when it comes. But yeah, the vampires in this one are very feral. They're not long for this world. They just eat, die, attack, like dogs that have been mistreated and don't know any better. The cleverer ones that can be made into full vampires, like Bart Taylor, they're a level above. And above them, there's the English Lord, who can make full vampires. And he looks like someone that's made of Teflon, that dirt and blood doesn't stick to him.
Yeah.
But this is all just a part of the vampire fake image. There's a spell that makes him look like this. It's part of the vampire curse, really, like your man that had the painting up in the attic. He looks fine, but really things are really rotten underneath. So when man becomes a vampire, this face comes true. And I had to have him trapped. He's so strong, he's so powerful, I had to have him trapped somewhere. And of course, with the sun, the desert, we have him trapped in this little box wagon. And we see John Two Wolves, and he has a way of looking at the world, and everyone is just prey. You could be a rabbit, you could be a fox, you could be whatever, a man or a vampire. And he learns your weaknesses, learns how to exploit that. And there's a great scene where the wagon rolls up, and the Renfield character shouts to two guys, Ferguson, and get out there and check that Indian, get him out of the way, because the Indian's sitting in the middle of the road, right? Now it's a desert. You just go around them, it's not like you're on the highway. So, but they have to stop. It's a Wile E. Coyote kind of thing. There's an obvious way, you just ride over them, you know. No, they have to stop. That's what makes them vulnerable. And he shouts these two guys to go and check out that Indian. But the two guys are named after two lads from Irish Comic News. Right?
Right.
If you're going to throw something in, you have to have names. Why not? So we see John Two Wolves in his element, you know, and we see a vampire walking around the middle of the day as well. It's just what I wanted to have, something like that, you know.
Yeah.
And we've had the huge fight, and now we have, you know, trapped the vampire in his lair kind of thing.
Yeah.
The thing is, the vampire is very much a creature of habit, you know. You know, he has a coffin that he damaged because he was just frenzied. He burst out of it because he hadn't had blood in weeks. He was stuck on a ship, you know. So he needs that thing, that little bit of home fixed. So he has to go and visit you know, a guy who makes coffins, a lowly human, you know. And it's there that we find out that there's a prophecy, you know, Pahoma, this white hunter is coming. Who is it? Is it Bart Taylor? Is it the vampire? Who is it? This great devourer is coming. It's part of Indian folklore now. It's there, you can Google it, it's a thing. And that was a red herring I was throwing in for people, you know, because those scenes, if you took them out, it wouldn't make a lot of difference, you know. But they're there and they're fun because they're very atmospheric, they're very noir, you know. And the man's there, he's got his Indian wife, you know, and this powerful vampire shows up and thinks he can buy him. Of course, you can't buy him. It's very clearly you can buy this guy. And but the Native American Indian woman, she's, no, I see through you, you know. I know what you are, you know. And she thinks she can take him on, you know, but you know what happens. Yeah. But so all the scenes with the vampire when he's doing anything, the lady in the saloon, the lady that owns the saloon, he's very much aware of the hierarchy, you know, because he's English lord, so he knows that there's people he has to kowtow to, and other people he can just piddle on because they're nobodies, you know. And he's got that with him. That's part of who he is, you know. The Russian vampire, when he shows up in the next one, is just a farmer that was wrong place, wrong time, and was turned. And you know, he has no airs and graces. You know, this Russian guy, he thinks he sees a blind singer on stage and thinks, oh, this wonderful thing, you know. If I have her with me, then I'm better than I was before, you know, kind of thing. It's all just frappery, you know. It doesn't really mean anything. He's trying to buy elegance, you know. He wears the best clothes, he wears everything. He's got a whole train, and you know. So you see him in the next one. But all the vampires, they stay who they are when they turn. And that was important because Bart Taylor seems to become somebody completely different. Becomes the man in black, you know. Whereas before, he was a grizzled man in his late 40s, doing his best for his country. Where did this black clothed vampire come from? You know?
Yeah.
So, see, he's not gone away. We think he is, but he's not. And there's a lovely scene. One of my favorite scenes is, and it's a camera trickery, you know. They're at a train station at night, and he shows up, you know, and his wife and son are there, and she's having none of it, you know. She's made the decision, first chance I get, I'm on a horse, you know. I'm taking the bite, I'm going. That's what she thinks. And the camera pulls back and sees them just highlighted, you know, and it becomes indistinct, you know, because their future is now indistinct. We don't know where they're going to go, you know. So that's a bit of camera trickery just to give people that feeling that we're pulling away from them, because this is a situation we don't really like the situation, because he should be the father, you know, he should be taken on the chin. But we now know that he's liable to turn, you know, but he's going to turn, you know. What can she do about it?
Yes.
He knows in the earlier scene that she's armed, and she obviously has a silver bullet in this gun,
Yeah.
and he goes, makes you feel safer. You can take the gun out and hold it if you want. I don't mind, because she won't shoot him.
Yeah.
So the vampires, they should become more of what they were, but he doesn't.
Yeah.
Who was he then if he's like this?
Yeah.
We find out in the next one.
Do you know what's really interesting? I just watched, for anybody watching our video, a vampire movie, a really big budgeted vampire movie just opened in the cinema. It's a stinker. It's so awful. I've never been, you see
It's Mobius, is it?
Yeah. Oh, I mean, I'm listening to every word you're saying there. I'm thinking about, it's like this tree with all these branches but they're all connected, and wow. And I really want to know more about that. That's interesting. Okay. So, right, you've got the West, but then you've got the far and South. What would San Francisco be like at this time? This is all the things I'm thinking. As you're talking, I'm thinking, what would it be like? San Francisco. Okay. Hang on a minute. Maybe we could work in the San Francisco earthquake. No, that's a bit later on, isn't it? So this is all the things I'm thinking, right? And then there's this. For anybody, how much is a copy of the Talking Gun? Right.
We kept it at a tenner.
Listen, for 10 quid, everything you've just heard in this episode and the last episode, all of the minutiae, all of the detail, all of the characters, all of this sprawling effort, for a tenner. And I watched this movie, this vampire movie, and I bored to tears. They've got all the effects. And what I can't understand, the thing cost $100 and some million to make, $100+ million, and they couldn't spend a tenner on the script. I mean, oh my God.
When you're making a movie, you're fighting a hydra with 7 heads trying to make a movie, and every one of them wants part of something. So if you ever tried to make a small little home movie, we did a photo shoot, myself and the kids, in abandoned offices for a book we did. It was going to be a series just with photographs, and it didn't sell because people don't want photographs. They want art,
right?
And I tried going the art route, and people weren't getting the idea. 2 different artists came in. Is she Dora the Explorer? No, she's not. So
right.
I roped in Haley and the boys, and we made this little thing. And I was all over the place. I was this scene, Haley, we're this, we're that, and then I roll, and I took under, and then they catch you, and I fold the knife back on you into your throat. And Haley's there going, Dad, we're just taking pictures, so where do you want me to stand? It's so difficult. It was great fun, but it was so difficult. I can only imagine what it's like having $150 million movie and trying to keep all the balls in the air and stay true to something. I'm sure there was a shooting script, and the script they ended up with was completely different. I'm not making excuses now, but
yeah. No, it's always that I'm not. People go and make movies, and I want to see them. I'll be there. I was there. I'll watch movies. I'll not be watching the Fast and Furious movies. I don't.
No, I've never seen one though.
No, but
no, I did. I saw not Calvin Hobbes. Hobbs and Shaw. It's The Rock and Jason Statham. I saw that one, and like they say, park your brain somewhere and watch it. I thoroughly enjoyed it because it was so stupid,
Yeah, I have no issue with that at all, none at all. But I'm just sitting watching this movie, and I'm thinking, I'd just rather be anywhere else. And whenever I know vampires, and I'm thinking 100. If I'm thinking about some other movie or comic that I've read or that I've worked on, what I'm not thinking about is this. And this thing costs $100+ million. Could have slipped a wee bit more money to the writer and said, spend a wee bit more in the script, just before you go with the vampires and the thing. Anyway, Yeah, more. Listen, don't waste your money on Morbius. Get a copy of the Talking Gun. Where can you get a copy of the Talking Gun, Ray? Where can you get your copy?
In Dublin, you can get it from Big Bang Comics in Dundrum. You can get it from Dublin City Comics Collectible in Dublin City itself. You can get it from our website, twopugspublishing.org. We'll post it out to you. Or walk up to me at a convention and tell me you heard the wonderful things Jim Lavery said about it, and we'll sort you out.
Listen, for $10, it sits on your shelf. You can go back and read it again and pick up on all the stuff that you didn't see the first time, and so on and so on. It is the gift that keeps on giving for $10. Seriously, yeah, brilliant project. I'm not sure we'll have a chat offline, Ray, about what we'll talk about next. But if anybody wants to follow up, I could talk about the Talking Gun, especially whenever you're describing now the next issues. I could keep on going and keep on going. So we'll have a chat about what our next. Stick your comments down, ask us any questions, like and subscribe and share. And thanks if you've already watched it. Please keep on doing it. It just helps me and Ray out. We're finding our way. I keep on saying we're finding our way. So anything that you can contribute, any advice, any questions, we're all ears. This was really fun. Thank you very much for this.
Oh, thank you. Great. I mean, I'm a writer. Writer loves to talk about stuff, you know.
Love hearing about it. Also, you make me feel clever that I spotted all your stuff. You make me feel smart, which is always.
What I do find is that we don't give people enough credit sometimes, you know. Something we think that is a really clever tapestry we've woven into something. Someone goes, it's Terminator 2. And you go, yeah, it is, yeah. You know, some things are very obvious to other people, you know. And
yeah,
so it is. But you can't. You go back and find Easter eggs and all our things that I haven't even mentioned yet, like, you know. You should ask me about the coffee sequence in Den Bones. I'll tell you that story next time, maybe. Yeah.
So you're really, really rotten. You do that. Yeah. Just right, and like the gorilla, and then you just yank it away. But anyway, we'll not get into right. Okay, we'll park it. Thanks again.
No, thank you.
Terrific. And thanks everybody for watching, and we'll see you next time on Two Pugs.
Yeah. God bless you.
See you next time.
Always a pleasure.
See you later.